Peace. This is the Afro Times weekly news update. Today we're going to be talking about something a little different than the headlines. You can find those on the Afromerica domain at www.afromerica.com, and you can look on the front page or you can go to the headline section. But today I'm gonna go into a mixture of a prophecy or uh, what's coming, ahead for this country, and it's all a mixture of politics, spirituality, and American government, and social justice. But this is something that has been forming over the past few years. I would say the last 10 years. It's really been coming together a lot more. And what I want to do is discuss it because I keep seeing, it coming to pass more and more. But this is meaningful to people, whoever you are. And particularly I'm speaking to Black America and people of color, period, because this problem that is happening, it has a lot to do with the war we're having with the wealthy and this push of white supremacy that's going on around the world. And I keep trying to tell people that this is a real thing, this white supremacy thing. But a lot of people know all about it. But what they're trying to do, this push for supremacy, for control, is a twofold push. It's on one hand, it's the side of the wealthy to take over government, not only American government, but governments of the world. And on the other hand, a push of this white supremacist base that wants to maintain power, not only in America, but they want to rise around the world. And the reason I say this is relevant and that it is literally happening is because a few countries, such as the United States, of course, with its rise of this authoritarian president, and a few other countries, such as Brazil, who has a right-wing authoritarian president now, and I believe it's India just has a right-wing government now. And what I mean by right-wing is this authoritarian type of government that there's no more democracy, there's no more fairness or justice. It's whatever. Usually these countries are run by dictator type leaders. Also Israel, Netanyahu, and there's a lot of in Europe also, where there's ethnic cleansing, and there's this call for nationalism of the people who actually live in the country, whether it be Europeans, Israelis, or Brazilians, a certain type of Brazilians. The lighter shade of Brazilians is taking over and oppressing the darker shades of Brazilians. And this is happening around the world. It's becoming very much more clear. And this prophecy that I'm talking about here, I wrote this before, it was a few months before the presidential election, 2016 election. And what I was seeing was a lot of, I was seeing this rise in authoritarianism and white supremacy, and a rise, a continued takeover of the American economy, the job market, the foreign relations policies, as from the wealthy to take over. And what they're doing is they're diminishing rights of workers, and they're dismantling their labor, their ability to organize labor unions and just ability to have a right to a decent place to work. They're just trying to work people to death, whether it be by temporary agencies or refusing benefits, health care, working longer hours for less pay, not giving raises, and things of this sort. It's a corporate push for power, and this is going on around the world. But this began back in, during the time of Clinton when they pushed for the NAFTA agreement that pretty much, outsourced all of the United States jobs and things like that. But this prophecy I wrote, it's called this topic is called "Whoever Votes for or Supports Authoritarianism in 2020 Will Be Destroyed." Okay, in other words, anybody who is behind this man or this agenda of authoritarianism, they will be destroyed. Now I'm gonna go ahead and let you know that it comes from the prophecy that I wrote earlier, entitled "God is Destroying White Supremacy." He's exposing it and he's destroying it. Right, and this is a two-phase plan by God, and it comes out of this scripture, out of the Bible. But in keeping with a more recent prophecy that I brought forth before the last presidential election, and it has been partially fulfilled. The beginning part of it, he's exposed white supremacy. Now he's going, in 2020, depending on who wins, he's going to destroy white supremacy. And I'm going to tell you how. After witnessing the corruption and mismanagement of the United States government, which you can see it for yourself. If anyone continues to stand behind this president and his ideology, the second half of the prophecy will decimate them and their entire agenda. That means white supremacist agenda and the corporate capitalist agenda. But before revealing the second half, you must understand that there are two possible scenarios for the aftermath of the 2020 election. First one is, if the president is re-elected, it means authoritarianism will become the new American governmental model. All right, with white supremacy at its roots. Okay, that means corporate power will have taken over, and white supremacy will continue to rise. But listen here, it means the wealthy have completed their agenda to suppress the freedoms and labor rights of the average working person. And it means the country's only means of information will have become a full-blown propaganda machine in favor of the oppressors, the media. If this man wins and corporations win and white supremacists win, that means the media it will become full-blown propaganda, because it becomes state TV, put it like that, such as in Russia and China, where they just have one basic, channel, main channel that gives you the information, and there are no other alternative forms of information coming into the country. This country will begin to suppress that, and this is bad for the country. Number two, the other case scenario would be, if this president does not win, it means all those who stood behind him and his authoritarian ideology have been weighed in the balance of divine justice, and they will now suffer the consequences. Okay? It means the rest of the country has another chance at bringing forth a true democracy for the good of the people, yet they must be careful to bring forth and maintain a sense of justice. Right now we're living in injustice. It's and I'm going to get to that. But in either case scenario, the overall prophecy will be completed by the eventual destruction of all those who sought for authoritarian rule. Even if this president wins, the aftermath of the agenda he is bringing forth will ultimately not end well on many levels for anyone in this country or in the world, because the agenda is based on oppression of the poor, the defenseless, the powerless, and unfortunately people of color. This entire agenda being run by capitalist corporations and white supremacists is all based on that. It's all based on oppression of the poor and the defenseless. The prophecy in its original message comes from the Bible book of Second Kings chapter 10, and I'm going to read it. It's a story. It's a parallel. The message parallels America's situation as it is today. And just listen carefully. Which stands in the darkness of idolatry. All right, people are worshiping the spirit of authoritarianism, a strong man, a take control, bully type of person. The worship of, and which is idolatry, is the worship of any entity that is not representative or his divine justice. This idolatrous spirit is authoritarianism based on the rule of someone or something that takes power and abuses that power in every way that is unrighteous, corrupt, and cruel. And we're seeing some of these things happening with the laws and the policies being implemented by um, this this president and from some of the countries around the world. If you've been keeping up with domestic issues, in Second Kings, okay, chapter 10, this dark force called Baal, B-A-A-L, a false god that many people within the kingdom worshiped and pledged to in opposition to the true God. They were worshiping this idol. The king of the nation at that time was Jehu, who was compelled by God to rid the nation of these false worshippers once and for all. His plan was to sift the false worshippers from the nation by calling a fake assembly and gathering specifically for the worship of Baal. That way, all the false worshippers would show up at one place at the same time. This was his plan. He said, I'm going to call an assembly, and we're going to find out who these people are. Okay? And it reads, Now therefore call unto me all the prophets of Baal, all his servants, and all his priests. Let none be wanting, for I have a great sacrifice to do to Baal. Whosoever shall be wanting, he shall not live. But Jehu did it in subtlety, to the intent that he might destroy the worshippers of Baal. In verse 20 it says, And Jehu said, Proclaim a solemn assembly for Baal. And they proclaimed it. They told it around the whole nation. They'll come on to the worship of Baal. And Jehu sent through all Israel, and all the worshippers of Baal came, so that there was not a man left that did not come. And they came to the house of Baal, and the house of Baal was full from one end to the other. Okay? Now, this is parallel to the situation in America today, that the worshippers of Baal are equivalent to the people who support this president and his constituency and their authoritarian and oppressive agenda. All right? Be it individual voters of small rural towns who want to maintain white supremacist control over the country, to politicians that are bribed by corporate raiders who seek to make laws of their policies and who push their policies through the courts that will protect them and their assets and their wealth against any forms of socialized governing or organized labor. See, they want to maintain control over the money. They want you to work, make them money, and they want to keep the money. They don't want to, they're not dispersing the money equally or fairly. Okay? This is who these people are. They are equivalent to worshippers of Baal because they are idolaters. All right? either by greed or by uh, racist oppression, racist superiority. Now, in the run-up to the 2016 election, God called them out, just as Jehu did when he could proclaim a solemn assembly for Baal. He called them out. When this guy came up, you could see all of the races came out of the woodworks. I mean, people who had not voted for years came out to vote for this man. So he called them out. In America, the races came out of the woodworks, from the lowest of the income ladder to the highest, in every position of authority, to every educational and class status and background. People who sought the authoritarian rule through government and policy voted for and supported this president. Businesses to people who lived in trailer parks, they all supported him because they want this authoritarian control. Since then, and you have, this is witness, you know this, since then the public have identified them either through social media videos, news reports of profile cases of racism and white privilege, to the votes of politicians for oppressive and racist policies that give favor to authoritarianism. We see online and on the news, racist white folks, racist cops, and racist policies or racist acts of white privilege, such as the university scandal where they were paying people, bribing the universities to take their kids, to the votes of politicians on how they vote, what votes they block, what law proposals they block that would normally help people, they block it, and all of them who support the policies and the agendas that give favor to authoritarian rule. We've seen this. We have seen this. All right. World leaders also have taken note of the people who support this president. All right. They know who these people are and have cringed against the foreign policies that the American government has pushed. They're looking at the foreign policy. This is the reach for global power of authoritarianism. The policies that they push, such as the trade wars. Okay, we see how that's working out. The foreign intrusion into America's political system. Some of the politicians here don't even care that another government is intruding or invading our political system, our voting system. All right, and America's constant bullying and push toward military conflict with countries who have done nothing wrong. We see this going on, if you're paying attention. In addition, lawmakers around the country have proposed legislation that turns back decades-old laws and traditions that have previously kept the country from falling into authoritarian rule. This government, the checks and balances that they always like to brag about their founding fathers and the Constitution, how it's set up for each branch of government to check and balance each other, is falling apart. The checks and balances of the American legislative branches are in trouble, all right, because one branch has defied the powers of the other two. And at the current moment, there seems to be a stalemate, okay? This president has taken over the judicial branch of the government, and they're ignoring the subpoena powers of the Congress and the executive branch, who runs the judicial branch, Bill Barr, and they're going to rely on the Supreme Court to back them, but they're defying the Constitution and the power of Congress. They're defying it. So if they continue, if the Supreme Court backs the executive branch, the president and the Justice Department, if the Supreme Court backs them, there's nothing Congress can do. Nothing. They can't arrest anybody because the arresting powers is under the executive branch. So it's crumbling. The Constitution is falling apart, y'all. I'm telling you. At the current moment, there seems to be a stalemate. They don't know what to do. They're just going to take it to the Supreme Court, and we'll see what happens. By that time, the election, 2020 election, be done rolled around. All right. The lust for power is at an all-time high, and control of power is only one election away from being toppled by the opposing force. Nevertheless, God is still in control, and the sifting of all those who stand behind this reorganizing of American power have been highlighted and now ready for the next phase of the prophecy. Here's the next phase of the prophecy, which is the destruction phase. God is exposing and destroying white supremacy. Okay? Right now he's exposing it. You've seen it. He's exposed it all the way up to this current fight of the power of the executive, of the three branches of government. He's exposed all these people and who they are. You know, from the lowest of the trailer trash to the highest of the political spectrum, such as Mitch McConnell. Okay, these people do not have American democracy in mind. Okay, chapter 10, verse 25 reads, "And it came to pass, soon as he had made an end of offering the burnt offering," this is the second part, the destruction, that soon as he had made an end of offering the burnt offerings, that Jehu said to the guard and to the captains, "Now go in and slay them, let none come forth." And they smote them with the edge of the sword, and the guard and the captains cast them out, and went to the city of the house of Baal. And they brought forth the images out of the house of Baal, and burned them. And they brake down the image of Baal, and brake down the house of Baal, and made it a draught inside unto this day. Thus Jehu destroyed Baal out of Israel. Okay, this is just a shadow and type, an example. That was physical, but now we are in a spiritual battle. Okay, and this is what's happening. He's exposing. He brought him to the surface, to the assembly. Now he is destroying. The next phase is he's going to destroy them, and I'm about to tell you how. We know who they are now. Okay, the next phase is one of destruction. Even if the opposing forces win the election, listen to me, they lose as a consequence of natural law. Because if Jehu had not been successful in destroying the worshippers of Baal, they would have taken over the country, and all the country would be idolaters, and all the divine powers of the true God would have ceased. Now listen, which means there is no divine guidance or protection from the evil forces of darkness. If this president wins again, that means that the whole country has been turned over to idolatry, just like this one would have been if he had not destroyed the worshippers Baal out of Israel. Likewise, like in America today, if the oppressor wins, their plans will continue on, and America as we know it today will cease, and authoritarian rule will take over. That means racism, lawful discrimination, loss of individual freedoms, complete loss of individual freedoms, rights, and security will be the new insecurity will be the new normal. Laws will be changed to satisfy the desires of the racist supremacists and the desires of the greed of corporate raiders. And they will finally take the place of the so-called American dream, which is not really real except to those who got plenty of money. The world also will feel the brunt of American occupation and war. Smaller, more defenseless countries will be heavily looted. Not that they have not been looted recently or in the years past, but they're going to be looted, blatantly looted, of their natural resources for the sake of America's corporate greed and interest, taking their oil and all of their precious minerals and resources. And they will become war-torn under the guns and bombs of America, constantly, consistently, and blatantly. And America is going to have help from the other authoritarian and dictator type countries if they're not fighting amongst themselves. However, America will stand alone in this war, world war, because its allies will have been removed as a source of allegiance. Remember, they're going to be that hedge of protection is going to be removed, and the divine protection and grace of God will have been removed also, which leaves this country vulnerable to any and all evils of darkness. Unfortunately, the supporters of this agenda will also suffer the consequences of their win, especially the lowest of the president's supporters. The rural, low-income races will suffer because they will see more of their job security compromised by the corporate raiders and feel the pain of drug use that they're feeling now. Alcoholism, poverty, and death is going to explode even more. Yes, they are going to lash out at people of color because of this, yet they will only be met with resistance in pockets of race wars and riots around the country. The second American Revolution is coming, and it's not going to be just against the people of color. It's going to be within and among them themselves. They're going to be fighting for resources. Authority figures that back this president, such as law enforcement officers and government department heads of towns, cities, and states, will face a huge backlash from community members and constituents who will rise against the agenda they will now see as oppressive and against their own interests. They ask a lot, why does low-income America vote against their own interests? But now they're going to see, they're going to feel it. There will be a backlash from military officials and soldiers and their parents, a backlash from schools, healthcare industries, private and public employers, and many other sectors of society that will face the harsh realities of authoritarian rule. They're going to see what it's really like to be ruled by an authoritarian ruler. Right now, what keeps the supporters behind this president and the corporate raiders is the news media, who constantly feeds the public lies and propaganda as an agenda of the racist and corporate raiders. This is what they want the media to feed the people. Lies and propaganda, such as how great the economy is. They're telling these people lies. These are delusions. Yet, when the wars, the policies, and laws actually set in, right now they're only being proposed. But when they actually set in, when the trade wars, when the prices really begin to kick in, reality will change to a darker, more unstable form of life and living. The media personnel itself, who's making light of this, will face the strong arm of authoritarian oppression by way of persecution from the judicial arm of the government and possibly jail and imprisonment for bad press. That will become a reality because that's what dictators do. They take over the media. Okay? And under the illusion that white supremacy will once again rule and all people of color will be at the steps of Jim Crow type laws, low-income whites will be faced with another reality because there is a thing called emotional intelligence that by nature grows in and occupies the minds of people who have outgrown racial oppression and Jim Crow. A society advances intellectually and emotionally to where they outgrow that type of lifestyle. And a lot of white folks are going to realize that if they were to win. In the case of corporate greed and their agenda, prosperity only lasts so long when the worker base is oppressed and subjugated to unfair and unlivable working conditions. Once you squeeze and drain the working people of everything they have, they can no longer make you money. So eventually, that's what they're doing now. So many people are in debt that they can't spend the money that they would normally be spending for these products that these corporations are making. and the prices are going to continue to rise, and wages are going to will remain stagnant, if not be lower, by corporations if they get their way in controlling the economic foundation of this country. And now, last but not least, the religious crowd that backed this president, these lying false preachers who say and swear up and down this man was anointed of God, they will definitely feel the repercussions from God. Once they pass their religious agendas of overturning legal precedents like a Roe versus Wade, and they roll back laws protecting diversity and civil rights, this is what they want to do. And even their desire for racial segregation, which they really believe, that only white people can be saved of God, they will have to face their own sins of hypocrisy, the sins that they are not addressing, such as adultery, fornication, pedophilia, rape, incest, gun violence in the churches, by their children, robbery, and all other sins they have committed against the community and against their members of their own congregations. It will reverse itself and latch on to themselves and to their families. You're going to see a larger decline, a faster and steeper decline in morality in this country. This is because God's grace will have been removed from their presence. All these things and more will infect those who support and voted for this president. The catch being, even if the president loses in 2020, these things will still take effect for these people and at a more damning intensity. The object being to sift out idolaters and destroy them afterward. Regardless of the outcome, all those who attempt to push the authoritarian agenda, even after their defeat, will also face these curses. So this is the destruction part of it. This is if this man wins. That means that this country has voted for an authoritarian rule. But it's going to change. They think it's cute and funny right now. But when it really happens, and when it really sets in, all of these policies that this government has pushed, and all of this bullying and authoritarianism and threats against his political enemies and things of this sort, and against the media, all these things, once they actually kick in, if he wins, that's what's going to happen. It's going to kick in, and these people will be destroyed because of their own policies, because of their own mindset, agenda, and their own greed. I'm going to read a passage from 2 Thessalonians. And if you have a spiritual ear to hear this, then listen. It says, for the mystery, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, reads, verse 7, for the mystery of iniquity does already work. Only he who now lets will let it. God is allowing this to happen because he's exposing until he be taken out of the way. Once God's presence is removed, you're going to see. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Verse 9, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, people who support him, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they may be saved. They're not going to be saved in this period of destruction. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believe not the truth, but have pleasure in unrighteousness. This is what's going on. These people have pleasure in unrighteousness. The wealthy and the rich, the oppressors, have pleasure in oppressing people and taking their money, working them for little or nothing, even to the point of working them for nothing in the private prison industry, criminalizing children and taking children from their families and putting them in institutions or confining them in concentration camps. They have pleasure in this. Those racist whites who have pleasure in terrorizing people who are innocent, terrorizing Muslim women and children, terrorizing Hispanics, terrorizing refugees coming over here, terrorizing black folks, killing black folks, the police officers also. These people have pleasure in unrighteousness. But when these things come forth, when it's being revealed, by the grace of God, this man will not be, this will not come to pass, where they have to come to a point where he has to destroy them. Because regardless if they win or lose, he is going to destroy them. That's the next phase. And that phase is coming in the 2020 election, because that's going to tell, I would say 6 months before that, it's going to begin, and we'll begin to see in what direction this country is going to go. But it is around that time, and right after the 2020 election and the results of it, that we're going to know what direction it's going and how God is going to deal with this country. So I just wanted to give everybody that information. If you have any comments or questions, you can hit me up at the email and let me know what you think. I'm going to post this as a video online, and I also have written a article on this. You can find this in the political section of Afromerica. Just go seek it. I'm also going to post it as a podcast, so you can listen to it on your phone, wherever you are. So until then, I want to ask that you pray, because the scripture says pray for those that are in power and in authority, so we can live a quiet and a peaceable life. And that's not just us here in America, that is around for people around the world. So whatever you do, pray, read, meditate, whatever, however you reach your higher level, this is what I'm asking you to do, because this is what's going to happen. This is what's coming. So peace, more power to you.